Evening. Good evening. My name is Sue Acton, and I am the Vice President of Voter Services for the Grosse Pointe League of Women Voters. I am pleased to welcome our candidates, those here in the audience, and those viewing the forum on live stream. This forum is for the Grosse Pointe Public Schools Board of Trustees candidates for the general election on November 5th. A special thanks to the Grosse Pointe Public Schools for the use of this auditorium at Brownell Middle School this evening. We also thank Steve Gellci for live streaming this forum and for the follow-up video, which will be posted on our league website and Facebook page. I now ask you to turn off or silence your cell phones and devices. Individual recording of this is not permitted. Our league has gathered questions from the community over the past few weeks. We received an overwhelming response of over 100 questions. The questions have been sorted for relevancy, redundancy, and slanderous content. The format does not permit us to submit all the questions to the candidates. The League is providing this forum as an opportunity for the candidates to express their views related to their candidacy. Statements expressed by the candidates are neither endorsed nor opposed by the League. The League does not certify any candidate responses to questions as accurate. Voters are encouraged to fact-check information shared at this forum. The Grosse Pointe League of Women Voters is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are part of a national organization whose mission is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We offer candidate forums and other voter education programs as a service to the community. Again, the League neither endorses nor opposes candidates or political parties. We do welcome all men and women, 16 and older, to membership. Please visit our website at the League of lwvgrossepointe.org if you are inclined to support our mission of empowering voters and defending democracy. And now I would like to introduce Judy Florian, a past president of our Grosse Pointe League, who will serve as our moderator tonight.
Thank you, Sue, very much. Good evening, everyone. Before I introduce the candidates, there are several people in the League that I would like to extend a special thanks for their assistance for helping this event possible. First of all, our timekeeper, Julianne Phillips, right here in the front row. She's a very important person for this event. Our questions selection committee includes Patty Cardoz, Lori Kingsbury, and Jamie Ray Turnbull. Our greeters and hospitality volunteers are Kathy Gardner, Laura Larson, Lynn Pierce, Jane Russo, Wendy Sy, Deb Sloss, Sue Stanley, and Maria Williams, and of course our producer, Sue Acton. The format for this forum has been established by the League of Women Voters of Grosse Pointe and was provided to all candidates in advance. There are 9 candidates for 4 positions on the Grosse Pointe Board of Education. Each of these positions is for a 4-year term. All candidates are present with us this evening and are, in alphabetical order, Terrence Collins, Clint Derringer, Melissa Fradenburg, Diana Gellci, Kate Hopper, Laura Hull, Timothy Klepp, Heath Roberts, and Colleen Worden. Each candidate will have the opportunity to make an opening statement not to exceed 2 minutes. The speaking order was determined by drawing lots just prior to this forum. The timekeeper, Julianne, will hold up a card to indicate 30 seconds remaining. Julianne? And a card showing stop when the time has expired. When time is up, the candidate may finish only that sentence. The time begins when the candidate starts to speak. Following their opening statements, the candidates will be answering in alternating order written questions from the community. As moderator, I reserve the right to close discussion on a question. Candidates may not make personal attacks on other candidates. Such attempts I will cut short. At the end of the question period, each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 1.5-minute closing statement in reverse order of the opening statements. I remind those of you in the audience that there will be no questions or comments from the floor during this forum. All questions will be asked only by me. The audience must refrain from applause or other audible reactions until the end of the forum. We will now begin with the candidates' opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we will begin with Ms. Hall.
Hello, my name is Laura Hall. I've been a high school math and chemistry teacher and a Grosse Pointe Public Schools resident for over 23 years. I worked as an analytical chemist for several years before finding my passion in education. My 2 daughters have attended Grosse Pointe schools since kindergarten. I was fortunate to have the privilege of teaching at Grosse Pointe North for 3 years. My husband Adam and I purchased our first home in Harper Woods for the amazing schools. I enjoyed meeting neighbors on our old block last weekend. As our family grew, we moved to the city, across the street from the home where my grandparents raised their 6 children. The focus of my campaign is our students and staff. My goal is to provide a forum that amplifies student voices and invites community involvement. Continuing to care for the well-being of our students will allow them to thrive within the classroom and beyond. Supporting their causes and providing opportunities for them to be involved in their schools and community is imperative. Now more than ever, I believe it is important for teachers to be involved in the decision-making process in public education. Teachers bring a wealth of experience, knowledge, problem-solving skills, and insight to the table. Retaining and attracting high-caliber and staff is critical to the future success of our district. Concrete, measurable goals must be put in place to achieve financial stability. I will foster collaboration, communication, and trust by increasing transparency and accountability on the school board. All stakeholders should be invited to have a seat at the table and a voice where decisions are being made. As a longtime resident, parent, and former teacher in the district, I understand the issues that face our community. I'm committed to serve for the future of our district and for my 2 daughters. We must learn from the mistakes of the past and move forward together for the benefit of all students, families, and community members. Thank you.
Ms. Fradenburg, your opening statement, please.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I'm Melissa Fradenburg. I'm a proud resident of Grosse Pointe for the last 18 years. My husband, Jay Fradenburg, and myself and my 2 teenage children. I have a freshman at South and a sophomore at South. Professionally, I've built a career in finance, specializing in helping women navigate financial transitions like divorce and retirement. And that has given me a strong foundation in financial planning and fiscal responsibility, skills that I'm eager to bring to the school board. As a candidate, my priorities are clear. I support setting measurable goals for our administration, maintaining academic rigor, and keeping all buildings open while having a balanced budget. I'm committed to listening and working together for all of our taxpayers, students, and educators. Let's focus on what truly matters, providing an excellent education that prepares our children for the future. Thank you.
I do want to remind the candidates to please have your microphones as close as possible to you when you're speaking. Thank you. Ms. Worden, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the community and the League of Women Voters. My name is Colleen Worden, and I am currently a member of the Board of Trustees. I'm married to Dave Worden. I have a daughter who goes to Grosse Pointe North High School. Prior to that, she attended both Monteith and Parcells Middle School. Currently, I am an assistant prosecutor in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. I'm the deputy chief of the Special Victims Unit for our office, and that means that I prosecute people who do really bad things to kids, I fight hard for kids every single day. Prior to that, I worked at a firm representing municipalities, and I specialized in municipal finance and municipal law for 16 years. I am deeply invested in this community. I've lived here for 29 years, 21 years in the woods, prior to that in the city as well as in the park. I've been a volunteer for the Grosse Pointe public school system since my daughter started kindergarten at Monteith. I've been a room mom, a basketball coach. I've been on the executive committee of the PTO. And as the school board treasurer and vice president, I've also served in service roles on the board as well. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Grosse Pointe teachers. I'm also proud to be endorsed by the Police Officers Association of Michigan, and I'm a proud member of law enforcement. This school board election is critical. I am running for re-election because I critically value public education in our community. I think academic excellence is very important, and we have to make sure that academic excellence is available to all people. I think that we need to focus on fiscal responsibility. We have some serious issues with our budget currently. I think we have to make sure that we address our enrollment issues, and I think we have to stop the mass exodus of teachers and administrators in our district. Additionally, I've been a strong voice for transparency, and a strong voice of reason sitting on this board. Thank you.
Mr. Collins, your opening statement, please.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting the candidate forum tonight. My name is Terry Collins. My family has lived in the park and woods for the last 24 years. Since 2001, our children have attended Ferry, Parcells, Trombley, Mason, Pierce, and Grosse Pointe South, culminating in the graduation of our daughter, Kira, from South this past June. Currently, we have 2 grandsons at Ferry and a 1-year-old granddaughter who will join them in a few years. My family remains extremely invested in what happens in this school system. I was appointed to the board in October of 2023. My reason for running to retain my seat are considerably different than in 2022. In 2022, despite what the then superintendent and school board members were telling you, this district was on the precipice of financial disaster. In June of 2022, this district reported the largest single-year financial fund equity loss of $5.1 million, despite receiving $4 million in COVID money. I think the situation at the time was best described by our now board president Cotton when he said our district was in a death spiral. Despite the obvious financial crisis in 2022, 2 of the candidates on stage tonight at the League of Women Voters Forum told you that the district's finances were not an issue and they supported the previous board and administration. In 2021, one of the candidates on stage tonight told you that our former superintendent was a financial wizard. Financial wizards don't lose $9 million in a single year with nothing to show for it. So why run this year? I believe that it's imperative that we keep and build on the momentum gained over the last 20 months. Our current board leadership and new superintendent have stopped the bleeding and put an end to and put us on a path of financial stability. Families are returning to our district. Last year, our headcount projection was up by we beat the headcount projection by 89 students. This year, we're already over our enrollment from last year. So the simple question to ask yourself is this school district better off than it was 20 months ago? And the answer is yes. And I look forward to the rest of the questions this evening. Thank you.
Ms. Gellci, your opening statement, please.
Good evening. My name is Diana Gellci. My husband and I have been residents of Grosse Pointe for over 20 years. We chose this community for its excellent public school, and we got that right. After completing their education in the system, our 2 kids became both engineers. Chris is a software engineer and Clara is a biomedical one. They have started their own families and live on the West Coast for now. We also have 2 grandkids that have become a motivation to our life. I have chosen to run for the school board because I believe my unique experience and qualifications can positively contribute to our public education. My journey began as a laundry attendant at Sparky Herbert restaurant on Kercheval. Probably some of you remember that. And it has led me to earn a PhD in business and organizational anthropology with a concentration in education and e-learning technologies. I have dedicated my life to growth and learning, and today I serve as the discipline lead for social sciences at Wayne County Community College District, where I have been teaching for the past 20 years. My international experiences include the degree in economics, and 15 years in the planning and banking industry, which equips me with a diverse skill set that I believe can benefit our school board. I believe in the power of public education as a means to enhance our community. I am committed to ensuring that every student in Grosse Pointe and Harperwood has the opportunity to thrive, and every teacher deserves retention. I look forward to the opportunity to serve our community. Thank you.
Ms. Hopper, your opening statement, please.
Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight and to participate. As a newer member of the League of Women Voters, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the leadership and members for hosting this forum. I know you put a lot of work into it, and I know our whole community appreciates it, so thank you. My name is Kate Hopper, and I join you tonight not just as a candidate, but as a community member deeply invested in the future of our public schools. I was born and raised in this community, so that means I've lived here for 52 years, quite a while at this point. And I believe in and care greatly for this community. My husband, Pat, our children, Caroline and Patrick, and I collectively attended 8 of our public schools. We went to Barnes, Brownell, Kirby, Mare, North, Parcells, Pierce, and South. This deep history shows how entrenched our roots are in this community and emphasizes why I'm so passionate about working for the success of our schools. It's our love of our community and dedication to enhancing our students' education experience that drives my commitment to serving. Through my career, I've gained a skill set that I believe is very unique and sets me apart as a candidate. I have a strong background in communications, marketing, and public relations, and I think I can round out a very well-rounded board with those skills. I started my career over nearly 30 years ago and served as the marketing manager for General Motors' 5.5 million square foot global headquarters, and also had a tenure as Bedrock's marketing manager in their 15 million square foot portfolio. Through these experiences, I've gained an understanding of the nuances of collaboration, the significance of data-driven decision-making, the complexities of contract negotiations, and the importance of long-term strategic planning.
Time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Klepp, your opening statement, please.
The role of a leader in any leadership situation is service, looking out for the well-being of the people that are charged with leading and enabling their success. In the case of a school district, that means enabling the success of the students, of the teachers, of the administrators, with students at the top. Through my answers tonight, that's what I hope to convey about myself, is a leader whose impulse is to serve rather than control, to understand before trying to be understood, and to unite rather than divide. My name is Tim Klepp. My wife Heather and I moved to the park 21 years ago. We educated all 3 of our kids through the system. My 2 oldest are at U of M right now, and my youngest is a senior at South. From an education standpoint, I received my bachelor's from MSU in accounting, have an MBA from Indiana. I started my career with Deloitte and earned my CPA certification there, and currently I'm a partner with IBM Consulting. I want to thank the League for hosting this tonight. I want to thank all of you for attending and for those who are watching online. On their 411 website, the League asked for my vision of this district. And the gist of my answer was that our schools are the connective thread that pulls the Grosse Pointe and Harper Woods communities together. And personally, I don't have better words to describe the importance of this district. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, your opening statement, please.
First, I want to thank everybody here tonight for showing up and folks watching online. Prioritizing this forum and this discussion represents community engagement, and that's so important. Thank you. I'm Heath Roberts, and I call Grosse Pointe Park home. Lindsay and I have 3 kids in this district, an 11th grader, an 8th grader, and a 5th grader. Our kids have been or are attending currently Mare, Pierce, Brownell, and South. We moved to this wonderful community 5 years ago for my work. We landed in Grosse Pointe, mainly due to the great public schools, the walkable community, and the proximity to Detroit. I am a U.S. Army veteran, an engaged and active community member, and one who believes deeply in the well-being and education of our children. My career has been dedicated to pediatric health care. I've worked at multiple children's hospitals across the country, in Missouri and here in Michigan. Accountable for thousands of staff, multi-million-dollar budgets. Things like financial stability and managing complex organizations focused on kids sums up my experience. Today I run the Population Health Services team at Henry Ford Health System. Thank you again for being here and listening online. I look forward to the Q&A session, earning your vote in November, and representing this community for the next 4 years.
And Mr. Derringer, your opening statement, please.
Good evening. I'm Clint Derringer from the city. I'm a program manager with most of my professional experience in the automotive manufacturing industry. My wife, Bethany, is a phenomenal special education teacher at Ferry Elementary in the Woods, and we have 2 kids at Mare Elementary and 1 at Pierce Middle School. He's at 5th grade camp today. Miss him. 2022 was a tough year for our family. Early in the summer, my father was hospitalized during a battle with esophageal cancer. Just a few weeks later, his father, my grandfather, was hospitalized with a severe case of COVID-19, and he sadly passed in August. My father was released from U of M Hospital in Ann Arbor with a feeding tube just barely in time to attend that funeral. He was almost unrecognizable, but he was there. With the support of my stepmom and my grandmother, he was there to honor his dad in person. On October 28th, 11 days before the last school board election, it was my turn to honor my father with a eulogy. And to paraphrase that speech, my dad wanted to be just like his dad, even to the very end. 2 years later, here I am running for the board again. My policy positions and beliefs remain consistent, and I look forward to discussing most of those topics tonight. But 2022 left an unmistakable mark on how I answer the question, why are you running? I feel a profound duty to lead by example, especially through the eyes of my 3 kids. I'm running to help return a clear sense of servant leadership to a board that has been far too consumed with seizing and wielding power. Together, we can help ensure our world-class public schools remain a strong foundation for all of our communities into the next generation. Thank you to the League for hosting, and thank you all for taking the time to become informed voters.
Okay, we will now go on to the questions. And starting us off will be Ms. Fradenburg. The first question is, how do you plan to address the shortage of special education teachers and paraprofessionals in the district? Please include staffing, retention, and differences between schools in your response.
Okay, well, that's a nice, easy one to start with, isn't it? Again, I have not served on the board yet. I hope to. So I don't have all the information on what exactly the issues are, but I have talked to some friends in the district, and it is my understanding that other districts offer increased pay for high-demand positions, such as special education, and that we are not able to offer that we have limitations in that. So I would certainly, part of the role on the school board, if I elected, would be to negotiate for that with the unions to allow that, because I think it's important for special education students here in this district.
Thank you. Ms. Worden?
The thing we need to do is prioritize special education from the first place. In the last year, we allowed our special education director to be cut. her position was not renewed, and she left the district. We were left with a void in our district, which shows that we weren't prioritizing special education kids. So that's the first and foremost. We also have to make sure that it is a top priority in our district. All of our students deserve the same academic opportunities, and that includes special needs kids. So we have, and furthermore, we have to make sure we pay our teachers. That's the second thing we have to do. In order to get quality teachers here, we have to pay them, and that's first and foremost. And finally, I think that we have to make sure that each of our schools has the same opportunities at each of our elementary, middle, and high school schools. I mean, every student at every school should have the opportunity to learn, and that includes special needs students. I mean, at Parcells, they don't have teachers right now to start the classrooms, and that's wrong, and it shows that it's not been a priority.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Mrs. Fradenburg when she talks about the fact that we have current policies in place with our contract that don't allow us to pay special education teachers additional dollars to attract them to the districts where other districts do. The reality is that every special education teacher that we hire, we're hiring away from someone and causing a hole somewhere else. It's not a local issue, it's a state issue, and it's a national issue. So to kind of oversimplify it by saying we just need to pay people more, unfortunately, our contract doesn't allow us to pay people more. I wish it did, and so Ms. Fradenburg is exactly correct. We need to look to be able to do that in the future, to be able to fill those positions, again, by stealing teachers from other districts, because the reality is there just aren't enough teachers, special education teachers out there for all the schools.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci.
So I worked for 15 years with kids in special education one-to-one. So it is very sensitive for me to hear that there are not enough teachers of special education in our district. So what is the solution? You should be inside in order for you to understand. You should be part of the administration or part of the board. But I believe that we should give priorities to hire those teachers, give them incentives to get them, to work for us, because those kids, we are late. Those kids need preparation before even the school starts. So my idea would be to create that kind of bond, to work with union and get incentives to pay for those teachers and even further their education if that is a necessity. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper?
Special education students are every bit as important students in our community as any student. And I agree that we need to prioritize their education. I do understand, if I'm correct, that we were hindered by contract negotiations, that we weren't offering, or we were not able to offer higher pay. If I were elected, I would work to include higher pay for special education teachers in our negotiations.
Thank you. Mr. Klepp.
The first step to solving any problem is acknowledging that it actually is a problem. So I appreciate the question, and I appreciate the responses we've heard here tonight. So we do have to prioritize an area that so often at this point seems like it has been an afterthought. So we should look to the drivers and help our teachers put together a package that addresses the compensation issues and addresses also the levels of respect and the levels of priority that we've given to special education.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. Let me start off. Compensation has been discussed, and I agree. It's important, but it's not the only factor. So I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned two things, staffing and retention. So our role as a board is to govern, okay? That means we need to hire and fire and support the superintendent. The superintendent needs to hire the right people on their team, on their leadership team. Those leaders then need to make sure they're hiring and holding accountable and supporting the folks on their team. I bring this up because staffing and retention, I've done it in healthcare with nurses. A critical part of that is the person you work for, the leadership in our district. And I fundamentally believe having a strong superintendent, building a strong leadership team is how you address some of these things specific to retention and staffing.
Thank you. Mr. Derringer.
So whenever we talk about teacher retention, we instantly talk about pay. My wife teaches in the special services department in this district. She voluntarily took an $8,000 pay cut to come to this district. Money is not the answer. But since we're talking about it, let's be 100% transparent. You hear some allusions to something in the contract that won't allow us to pay special services teachers anymore. Well, what is that? They want to be able to hire a teacher who has maybe 5 years of experience and pay them as if they have 10 years of experience. Sounds great. What does that mean? It means you're acknowledging, as a leader in this district, that the first 9 steps of your pay scale aren't enough to bring teachers into the district. So what should happen? Fix the pay scale. You don't need a special exemption for special ed teachers. Fix the pay scale. We are way behind the other districts in our area. We don't pay them as well. I know. My wife's a teacher. I see her paychecks. I appreciate that we're talking about this. Money's not the answer. Leadership.
Stop. Thank you. Ms. Hull.
I believe it starts with respect, first and foremost. I was a teacher in this district. I co-taught several classes at the high school level in the math department where we had students who received special services. I co-taught with special education teachers in the department. There are tools within the contract. It is not the fault of the union that we can't attract teachers. They can offer steps. They can make things attractive using the tools that we have. Part of the problem, I think the biggest part, is that our central office positions have been vacated. And so who would come to the district when there isn't somebody leading with very strong and committed tools? So we do have to have good leaders. We do have to hire good leaders, and we need to keep them in the district so that we can attract other teachers to come and to stay.
Thank you. Okay, we will go on to question number 2, and Ms. Worden will begin with this question. Please provide voters with information about your plans to enhance student wellness, either with a school health clinic, increased mental health counseling, or other options.
I think it's really important that we provide mental health services for our students. There was an opportunity a couple years ago to bring a clinic here. That ship has sailed because the funding was gutted. But when I asked to provide alternative programs, it was not addressed. I've tried several times to bring other opportunities to this district to provide wellness to our kids. It's been said several times that we have plenty of places that go up and down Mack Avenue where kids can get wellness and mental health and urgent cares. Kids don't walk into urgent cares asking for help. I can tell you as a prosecutor of working with victims of sexual and physical abuse, when kids are abused at home, they're not going to walk into an urgent care asking for services. We need to provide mental health programs and services in our schools, and we have to pay for counselors to provide those services to our kids. It is critical that we do that.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, the reality is that our governor gutted mental health dollars to school districts this year, unfortunately. I don't believe it's the role of our school district to have a clinic in our school. Absolutely not. Our school should have never had a clinic. We should have never actually qualified for the clinic. If you look at the state rules regarding the clinic, it talked about districts that had a high level of students below the poverty rate and who lived in rural areas. We're not in a rural area, and we don't have an abundance of students who are below the poverty level. So yes, we have to address mental health. We have counselors in our schools, and we have to look at the state grants that are available to bring those extra dollars in to have those extra counselors.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci.
We talk a lot about money, and it feels like money is the biggest issue. Actually, I believe that one of the biggest issues, not just for our public schools here in Grosse Pointe, but all over the country, is safety issues. And so mental health and student well-being goes along with that. So I believe that there are a few ways on how we can do that: increase access to mental health professionals, implement comprehensive mental health education inside the schools, and then create a supportive school environment. It is very, very important. Teachers and administrators, but also parents and community should keep that in mind, because mental health is what is causing the rest of the problems in our school system. Regular mental health screening, and I understand.
Time is up. Thank you. Ms. Hopper.
Well, I do not believe that it was the role of our public school system to have a clinic in our schools. I do believe that we have a role in caring for our students, whether it's mental or physical safety. So I'd like to call it a whole program of student care. My daughter just got her degree in social work, and I know how important this is to our community and to our students. So I would support robust counseling and social work programs, school psychologists, programs that support our kids in the schools, and also looking at security measures that provide a feeling of safety and care.
Thank you. Mr. Klepp.
Our schools certainly have a role in our student wellness and their mental health. Our schools are part of the team that includes parents and first responders and medical professionals and our churches. We are all part of the team looking after and caring for our students. Our administrators and our teachers are on the front lines, so I certainly advocate for additional development and training for them so they can help detect issues. And ultimately, I see the role of the schools as acting as a bridge for students and parents to resources that they have available to them in the community.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. You know, as we know, our primary goal in the school district is academic excellence. Safety and well-being is a part of that and critical. I know that personally. We need as a community to have services that support the mental health and well-being of our children in this community. I agree that counselors in our schools have to receive training. They have to have education, not only to deal with circumstances that come up, but to also understand what's in the community and where they can refer kids to get treatment. Because there's experts that do this every day, and that's where these kids need to be seen. The other factor is education for our parents on what these resources are. We can do that as a community as well.
Thank you. Mr. Derringer.
Do you mind repeating the question, please?
Please provide voters with information about your plans to enhance student wellness, either with a school health clinic, increased mental health counseling, or other options.
Yeah, so a plan to enhance student wellness starts, for me, focusing on mental wellness. We have to destigmatize and allow people to say that there's a problem. That starts at a very young age if we're teaching our kids correctly. With any problem, it's much less expensive and less damaging to provide early intervention. We need to be talking about this with kids as young as possible and with the people that are engaged with those kids as early as possible. And then it becomes collaboration between parents, teachers, and the support staff that we've heard mentioned here. To do that, you need trust. You cannot have parents pointing at teachers and teachers pointing at parents. We have to come together and agree that it takes a village to raise every kid. And we all have to support every kid as if they are our own. Early intervention, trust between teachers and support staff and parents, and find the red flags early.
Thank you. Ms. Hull.
I believe it starts with prioritizing the mental and physical health of our students. We do have experts in the building. There are counselors. We have cut counseling staff. We haven't replaced counselors that have left. And we've eliminated a clinic, which would have been a huge asset to our community for both the mental and physical health of our kids. I can't teach a kid chemistry or math if they come to me in need. They have to have their needs met. They need to feel safe. They need to feel that they are in a trusted, safe place in order for me to teach them. And so we need to make sure that we provide some alternatives. There have not been any. we were told there would be, and there have not been any. So we have to start by building relationships and setting foundations for our kids. Our staff has been well trained in these things. We have positive behavior intervention strategies, and nearly all of the staff has been trained in restorative practices. So we need to continue those things and add to them.
Thank you. And Ms. Fradenburg.
Yes, as Terry mentioned, I was saddened to hear that our state legislature cut $100 million in funding for mental health for our schools this year in this budget. So if elected to the school board, I would certainly help to lobby for additional funding for mental health. I was not for putting a clinic at North. I still do not think that that is the answer. I do think that our children are hurting. It is a national problem that needs to be addressed, both at home, and I think we are doing a good job. I have had experience with both Brownell and South counselors, and they have been amazing and great resources for my own children. If it were allowed in the budget, and again, I would lobby for additional funds for that, I would love to see more counselors at each of our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Collins, you're going to start us off with question number 3. Several of you did mention safety, and we have a specific question for safety. Student safety is a pressing concern. What policies do you propose to better protect students and staff?
Well, I think the district has already taken great steps to address student safety by the SRO officers that are in both of our high schools. If you were watching earlier this week in Southfield, there was a student who brought a gun to school, and actually that Southfield High School has 3 SRO officers in the single high school, and they found that student by a tip from another student, and they got to that student before anything could happen to the rest. So I think that's first and foremost. The bond dollars that we've spent on safe and secure schools, secure vestibules, swipe card entry to all of our buildings for all of our staff, locked doors and secure door buildings. Those are the things that are going to keep our kids safe, but having that first line of response in our building with our SRO officers, I think has gone a long way, and I supported it, and I think that we need to look to find more resources that can be added to our other buildings.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci.
As I said, I believe that safety is one of the biggest issues that we are facing. And what I would propose is actually what the schools are doing, the board is doing, and the superintendent, as I was attending when she read that report, is that having a strategic plan on how to implement those technologies that can help safety in school. However, I truly believe that it is mostly a matter of education and good bonds with school and community and kids and parents and including teachers and everybody else.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper.
True school safety requires a community commitment to working together for the care of all of our students and staff. I do echo what Terry was saying, that we are on the path to already implementing some very important measures here. Earlier this year, such collective efforts led to the placement of SRO officers in North and South. Additionally, the proposed sinking fund will provide money for critical safety technology measures throughout our schools. We live in an era when we know that safety measures will continue to evolve, and I also think that we need an effective emergency plan that continues to evolve as our schools and students' needs do.
Thank you. Mr. Klepp.
I'll make 2 points on this issue. First is, I would like to make sure that our administration, our district, has done a very thorough review of all the lessons learned from all the tragic events, and that we incorporate those best practices into how we handle safety and security in this district. And then secondly, I would advocate to the community for the sinking fund. The sinking fund includes a great deal of funding to improve the security stature of our buildings throughout the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Yes, safety is absolutely critical to the success of our district, and really the safety and well-being of our students, our staff, and everybody that interacts in our buildings and on our properties. We mentioned officers. Definitely, that's something we need to continue to support. These folks do stop bad events from happening. They really do. and we need to continue to prioritize that. The other thing I'll mention is the security of our buildings. This was brought up, but it is important. Simple things like, secure entries, key entries for staff, cameras outside the building so officers and staff can monitor situations throughout the school or throughout the properties. These are all extremely important. And the last thing I'll say is there needs to be a safety plan, and that safety plan needs to be practiced by the schools.
Thank you. Mr. Derringer.
So I think we're all kind of traumatized by the rapid increase in gun violence in schools nationally, and every answer is centered on that. And I don't disagree with much of what I've heard, especially advocating for the sinking fund language that now includes technology to allow us to keep our security cameras and secure vestibules. I think that's very important. But the safety concerns that I see and hear when talking to students and parents are our kids are integrating with traffic at every school and not always in the safest manner. I think we need to strategically review all of the operations of every school, and the first section of that review should be student safety as they get to school and come from school, and asking kids to cross major highways and major roadways on a daily basis at second and third grade, the age of my two youngest kids, is not the safest decision. So we need to think that first.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
As a teacher, school safety is always utmost in my mind. It's true. Every time we walk into a room as a teacher, we look for the exits. We look how we can secure our kids and make sure that they're safe. Unfortunately, that's the reality. And so I think there's many things. We do have some great systems in place in our district. We can always do more. I think a big part of that is recognizing the needs of our students, and it does go back to well-being and making sure that we can address the issues that they may have and that our counseling staff can address those things. It's a partnership with our local communities and building trust with all of the departments in our communities. I think we need to listen to our kids when they ask for support. I think we need to continue to have good education and inform people about gun safety. It's very important, and I think we need to make it a conversation in our community and in our schools.
Thank you. Ms. Fradenburg.
Again, the sinking fund on November 5th, when you elect your school board candidates here, please do increase the millage. We need that for technology spending. And again, the sinking fund legislation was changed in 2023 to allow for technology, which is a huge part of safety, which gives us more dollars in our general fund to pay for other things, which is very important. The SRO officers are great. I was extremely impressed with them at the school board meeting. And every morning when I drop off my kids at South, they are actually helping kids cross the street and get there safely, as well as other services to keep them safe in school.
Thank you. Ms. Worden?
Thank you. I supported the overhaul of our security system 2 years ago with the bond money, and that provided the administration the opportunity to take a really close look at some of the things that we needed to do to make sure that we were safe and in line with all of the latest and greatest technology. I also supported the SROs in the building. I think that's been a great addition to our high schools to provide our teachers and our administrators with the safety that they need during the day. I also think that it's really important for our administration, and I know that our current administration does, as our past did too, to have a close relationship with the local law enforcement, with each of the police chiefs in each of the 6 districts, to make sure that they know the plans in place if we should have an emergency. I also think it's really important to educate our students. I supported the gun awareness campaign to make sure that kids and families understand the importance of safe gun storage and gun violence that's so prevalent in our community. And finally, I also support the sinking fund millage that would provide additional technology.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci will start us off for the 4th question, and you've already mentioned the sinking fund, so it's a question. The sinking fund is earmarked for facilities improvement. If the sinking fund millage proposal is approved by voters on November 5th, what are your priorities for the use of the money?
So this is a good question. Effective budgeting starts with a vision and priorities, is sustained by transparency, and must lead to accountability. So it is my belief that we should put priorities first And the first priority for all of us is our students and, of course, the teachers. So that is what I would start with. But then transparency is one of the biggest issues that is bringing things together in such a term that most of us and the public is not understanding correctly what is going on. So I would ask for transparency until the end of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper.
If that is voted upon, I have so much confidence in our new superintendent and our administration's plans for that sinking fund for those dollars. They have presented numerous times to the community at board meetings, at a town hall meeting here just this past week, and they did a fantastic job of explaining how they've earmarked all those dollars for a variety of things, mainly maintaining our beautiful old buildings. They cost money to maintain, and technology measures in the buildings that are desperately in need of updating to enhance our safety primarily for the students.
Thank you. Mr. Klepp.
The sinking fund, if it passes over a 10-year period, will raise about $111 million. But we know already that we have, per the last Plant Moran report, $252 million of needs for the district. My approach, if it passes, would be to work with the administration. They have plotted out a full plan for the full usage of the $111 million, for everything from all the technology and safety issues we've been talking about, as well as basic things like roofing. They've got a plan. So my interest really would be making sure that we are transparent about what's happening, and we're very careful with the dollars, that we don't overspend, and we work with good, solid, reputable contractors to spend that money. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. As a member of the Finance and Facilities Committee, and as I mentioned earlier, an active community member paying attention to what's going on in our schools, you'll know Dr. Tuttle, her facilities leadership, her technology leadership, they have a plan. They've outlined that plan. They're sharing that plan. It's important to get that out as we go to the polls to vote for this. That plan was developed not only in partnership with the committee, the community, but also the local schools and the teachers on what's needed in the district. Yes, Plant Moran was a part of that as well, consulting and helping us have experts in the room to guide. I have complete confidence in her plan, that $111 million, how it's going to be spent, and I, if elected and when elected to the board, will support her. The last thing I'll say, it is important and a duty of the board to govern the use of those funds, to make sure that the superintendent and her team are using those funds appropriately, and I'll do that.
Thank you. Mr. Derringer.
So the priorities for the sinking fund, again, Tim mentioned it's a 10-year collection of $111 million, so we need a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term plan. 1, 5, and 10 are typically what we do with this. Right now, the plan that we've seen kind of buckets it by school and by category, which is a nice start, certainly a lot of estimates in there. But I don't know that everybody was included in the creation of the plan. The Finance and Facilities Committee certainly does not include any teachers or staff. So I think in the 5-year and 10-year plan, we need to understand how our buildings and our assets in the community overlap with our enrollment, number one. Right now, our enrollment does not match our facilities map. We need a strategic review of all of the operations of our buildings, everything that we do between buildings, to make sure that we are staffing the buildings equitably, kids are enrolled in the right building, and we can then maintain those buildings to look as beautiful as they are today.
Thank you, Mr. Derringer. Ms. Hall.
I believe that the way that we use our money, and I know that it has already been earmarked for specific things, but updating technology is absolutely important in this day and age. Everything we do in education involves technology. Just a day or an hour without the internet down, it makes all of us have to refigure what we're doing for the day. So making sure that we are up to date and a leader in technology is important. We have to prioritize our expenditures so that they are closest to the classroom. The things that affect students and teachers the most are the things that should prioritize where we spend our money. And I agree that the committees that decided some of these things were not diverse committees representative of all stakeholders. And so I have to make sure that we have all voices heard when we decide where to spend this money, and also make sure that oversight and regular reporting of the standards and the things that we have happening are actually happening.
Thank you. Ms. Fradenburg?
Yes, so one of the things that makes our district so unique is we have 13 historic buildings that are 75 to 100 years old. So as far as the sinking fund money, a lot of that, and I should mention that I did serve on the Facilities and Finance Committee, so I do know some of the critical needs that have been identified, and it was not necessarily the committee members that identified that, but our buildings and facilities people have reported these are the things. And if you think about all those buildings and the age of the buildings, things like roofs, tuck pointing, windows, HVAC, paving, but the two most important, I think, that were eye-opening for me were, again, technology, the upgrades necessary just because all of our curriculum, as opposed to in the past where it would be books and things like that, it is technology is covering that. And then also, I was surprised to find out the fire alarms in several of our buildings, if something is broken, they actually buy parts on eBay to fix them, so we need to use that money to fix those.
Thank you. Ms. Worden?
Thank you. Well, we do have $252 million in critical needs, and some of them may sound boring like new roofs, but we do want to make sure that our beautiful buildings are kept up and maintained so that our students, when they go to class every day, there's not leaking roofs or floors that are not adjusted accordingly. So I think that the infrastructure would be a priority to me because we want to maintain our beautiful buildings. The second part about it is the safety. We have to make sure that we maintain safe environments for our kids. And I think technology is part of that. If we're going to be a cutting edge district, and we all want our district to be cutting edge, we have to make sure that technology is cutting edge. I was surprised to hear during the presentation that some of the phones in some of the classrooms were 20-year-old desktop phones, and we don't want that in our district. We're a top tier district. We want to be a top tier in technology as well. I also think that transportation is an important part of this as well.
Thank you. Mr. Collins?
Could you repeat the question, because I don't think I remembered exactly.
I can.
Yep.
The sinking fund is earmarked for facilities improvement. If the sinking fund millage proposal is approved by voters on November 5th, what are your priorities for the use of this money?
Yeah, so just a correction, the sinking fund is not just for facilities. So that's what I thought you said, and I just wanted to correct that. 2023, the state legislature actually updated the sinking fund legislation, so our new sinking fund will be able to spend it on technology and transportation as well. So that's why I thought that 3 mills were so important, because we can add technology, which everyone has said is so important, and also transportation. And this district, even though we're primarily a walking district, does have a considerable amount of money we spend every year on transportation. So a couple people have mentioned that the Facilities and Finance Committee dreamt up this list. Nothing could be further from the truth. We have got a great superintendent and administrators who developed this list, and they will prioritize what they believe is best for this district. It's their list, and we should support them in getting this sinking fund passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper, you will start us off with the next question. What is your idea for the best use of the Trombley property, and why?
Well, I will address that in the overall concept of closing schools, because I as a board member, would do everything that we can to retain all of our schools and keep them open in some use. The school system is a lure for so many reasons, and initially was planned as the walkable community of schools. And when Trombley closed, that was just a devastating closure for that community. I have so many friends and families in that community who were impacted by that. And I think we would need to work together as a board to make sure that we can open it safely and get creative about our uses for our buildings. But we need to keep them all within the Grosse Pointe public school system and work to keep them open.
Thank you, Mr. Klepp.
I will say simply that the walkability of our district is paramount. Our neighborhood schools are what create community. Closing Trombley was a significant loss to that community, a loss that is still felt today. So whatever repurposing we do for that building, it needs to include that community in the process, as well as the city of Grosse Pointe Park. And I'd say that we should do that process transparently, so that everybody knows exactly how the decision's being made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned, part of us moving to Grosse Pointe was for the walkable community. It's important. It's an important part of this community that dates back many decades. So I believe that the school district should certainly keep Trombley and keep the property. I think we need to work with the community at Grosse Pointe and Grosse Pointe Park and really the entire school district to identify how that school can serve not only our families, our students, but our community.
Thank you. Mr. Derringer?
Yes, the best answer certainly acknowledges the pain felt by both the Poupard community in Harper Woods and Trombley, which both closed that year. And we only talk about Trombley openly in these forums. Trombley has not been sold. Poupard has. It's going to be developed for housing, and I hope that there are some families that can afford to move into our district and increase enrollment in our district into that neighborhood. That would be great. For Trombley, their pain continues to linger and to be manipulated by people who are trying to seize power on the school board. We need to make sure that enrollment in our district matches our facility footprint and repurpose that property in the best case scenario for the district. If it can be a school, that would be wonderful. Show me the data, and I will be right there at the ribbon cutting ceremony, because I don't want kids walking across Jefferson anymore. It was a mistake to close those 2 elementary schools, but we need to be forward-looking and get from point A to point B now.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
I do believe that the property needs to be used in the best interest of our community and for our school district. So my hope is that we can use it either as an early childhood center or as a place for sporting events. There are unlimited numbers of things that we could do, but I do know that the property as it stands would require significant investment to get it up to code and to get it into a place where it could open as a school. We also need to look at enrollment, and if opening it were feasible in terms of our enrollment, that would be something that we could look at, but it needs to be a collective decision, and it needs to involve the community.
Thank you. Ms. Fradenburg?
Yes, I agree. We need to look at the enrollment, the current trends. Again, this year's budget was budgeted on losing 100 students, and we are actually up, so that's up 13 students, which 13 students does not fill a school. But again, the trend is in the right direction, finally. So this is something I would definitely like to look at, and this is a personal issue for me, as we left Grosse Pointe Public Schools when my oldest was in 3rd grade due to large class sizes. We were at Kirby, and we left to go to private school. I do not want to see kids, especially at Defer and Monteith, which I hear are very crowded, leave our district because we do not have enough space for our elementary kids. It is really important in the elementary level to have that space for them.
Thank you. Ms. Worden?
Thank you. I support keeping our buildings open, and I love that our district is walkable. I have called for a strategic review of our buildings, of our administration, to see what data we have to support whether or not we could open a school. And I think no matter what happens, we have to make sure that it's best for Grosse Pointe Public School System. I think it's also important that we include the Grosse Pointe Park community in that decision because it's housed in their district. But the most important thing I think we need to do is base whatever we do on data-based decisions. I've heard that there's been calls to reopen Trombley, but before we do that, we have to make sure we have the data that supports that we have the population to do that. Whatever we do, it has to be something that's going to support us as a fiduciary board and that we take our fiduciary obligations very seriously. But data has to be included. Data-based decisions have to be included in any of these decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Collins?
Go back to 2020 League of Women Voters candidate forum when you were replacing the prior board president. Go back to the 2020 candidate forum for the school board and look at what my fellow board member's answer was then about reconfiguration of our district. She supported the reconfiguration and closing those two schools. I support the opportunity to reopen Trombley as an elementary school and possibly an ECC as well. My daughter went to Trombley from kindergarten to fourth grade. Fourth grade. And then we moved to Harvard and she went to Mason for her last year. I would have never moved to that house in 1997 if Trombley wasn't open as an elementary school on Pemberton. No way. These people deserve an elementary school if there's enough students over there to support it.
Thank you, Ms. Gellci.
Thank you. I still feel that disappointment of our community when both of those schools got closed. So I'm very glad to hear that there are plans that we can open those, like how we are going to use them. I believe that we should really be careful, ask our community, and actually educate our community on how we are going to use them. But as you said, let's get creative. We need those schools, we need those buildings. It is not just a property. A lot of people, young and old, have memories, and that's, a sacred place. So let's return that to our community. This is what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klepp, you're going to start us off on the next question. Past practices of the school board have raised community questions about transparency in government. How would you work to address these concerns?
Transparency is one of the 4 pillars that we have as for our campaign. Putting students first, supporting our teachers, being fiscally responsible, and governing with transparency. There have been several examples for the current board where we've failed in terms of being transparent. The committees that were created, it's unclear how those committees were staffed. There was a report, an independent report produced related to the conduct of one of the board trustees in relation to administration at North, and that report has still not been released. There seems to be an impulse for secrecy, so I would certainly advocate, as becoming a board member, that we operate in a fully transparent way with the community.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. Transparency is critical. It's important to everyone. It's important to, our many different government entities, including the school board. So I definitely support transparency. I will mention that our committees are open to the public. I encourage each of you to show up to those committees. Staff, the superintendent, and her leaders are presenting at those committees, and I think the transparency that's shown by them, you'll be surprised how much information is shared there, how you can be an informed and active member of this community. The school boards are also public. I encourage y'all to show up to those meetings. There's a lot of information that's shared by the superintendent, a lot of information specific to our district and the direction, and you can see how board members stand on certain transparency items. So I'm fully supportive of that.
Thank you, Mr. Derringer.
Yeah, so when it comes to transparency, big shout out to the Alliance for Grosse Pointe Public Schools, who videotapes those committee meetings at 4:30 p.m. when most of us are still working and we can't attend in person. So thank you very much for providing such transparency for that organization. Let's talk about transparency right here as we're sitting here. Mr. Collins today in the Grosse Pointe News never said he believed Grosse Pointe needed a charter school, but if you go back to his interview with the Grosse Pointe News in 2022, he said, "I think it could be one of the greatest things that ever happens to the district. I believe we have an opportunity. I mean, I would love to see Grosse Pointe partner with Hillsdale in creating a charter school. We have 2 empty buildings, Tremblay and Poupard, that aren't in use. Those dollars would come to the district." Transparency, honesty, that would be great. Know your classroom, organization. Secretary on that board was Mrs. Hopper. That organization also wanted to use a charter at Tremblay as a threat. Do what we say, or we're going to get a group together and open a charter.
Ms. Hall?
I believe that transparency in government is extremely important. We need regular budget reports. We aren't getting those right now with line items listed, where the money comes from, where the money's going in particular. Understanding transparency in terms of who controls the narrative, who owns the newspaper that controls the information, making sure that we are informing our public, speaking to the report that hasn't been released on the misconduct of a sitting board member that led to the entire North staff to leave. That left a huge hole in our district, and there were a lot of people that were affected by that, and we still don't know the truth. Transparency.
Thank you. Ms. Fradenburg.
I agree, transparency is important, and I will just say, as far as, since it's been brought up a few times, how people were selected for the committees. I applied from an application that was posted on the Grosse Pointe community discussion page, and then was called for an interview. So I'm not sure what that is all about, but I will also say in the previous administration having to do with school closures, there was no transparency in how the 50-member committee who decided on the school closures was selected either. So again, I think that this is something we should look at, but it should be all around from the board, and do attend the meetings if you feel like you don't know what's going on, or watch them live stream because there's a lot of information there.
Thank you. Ms. Worden.
Thank you. Transparency is the key here. We are a public body. Our deliberations should be in public. All of the discussions we have about the budget should be at this table, talking amongst ourselves for board members. In the last 2 years, that's been cut to nothing. There are emails coming back and forth between board members about what they think the fund balance is, about what they think should be included in the budget, and not including other board trustees. Everything we talk about should be at this table. That's what's transparent. That's what the public can do when they come to this meeting. They can hear what we think about each budget item, what we think should and shouldn't be in the public. It shouldn't be going back and forth between board members. Second of all, we should never be cutting public comment. Following a 9-hour meeting where we talked about the budget, there was an effort to cut the public comment. If there's a 9-hour meeting, that means there's something that we're doing wrong, and we should talk about it. We should never cut public comment. We should encourage it even more. And finally, this refusal to release the report that was...
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Well, I'm glad we're not following the rules you set out at the beginning of the meeting about calling out other candidates by name, but that's fine if that's the way you're going to play it. The transparency that's happened in this board has been light years from what it was before 2023, before January 2023. If you remember back during those years, between June of 2022 and November of 2022, we heard nothing about a proposed clinic that was supposed to be opened, and then all of a sudden, right as the outgoing board of the lame duck board is about to leave, all of a sudden we had 4 meetings in 3.5 weeks about approving a clinic that, again, talk about committees. The facilities committee didn't meet between June and November, but all of a sudden they had a presentation that they rushed through the board. So the lack of transparency happened before January 2023.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci.
Thank you. So there are issues in our public system of education, and they will continue to be. Nobody has the magic to solve them. But I believe that the magic itself is transparency. If we are transparent with the public, with the parents, and the staff, teachers, and students, then we are going to get the solution. I'm an anthropologist, so culture is what I know the best. So I would support the idea of building a culture of dialogue versus divideness. Not only should the good school board maintain priorities, transparency, and accountability, but they also should educate the community about public education and the issues there. So absolutely, transparency is a good key that we all should support.
Thank you. And Ms. Hopper.
Thank you. Just to address the organization that Mr. Derringer just referred to, that was actually a very transparent group who was engaged in active dialogue, conversation, and debate. certain members of the group had certain opinions, and they were allowed to express them, and others were allowed to have varying opinions and express them too. So I think it was a very active and engaged group who appreciated dialogue. And I do agree, trust and transparency is imperative. This is an area where I'm eager to apply my communications skills. Communications are the lifeblood to any healthy, thriving organization, and if done with integrity, can build and will foster trust for our Grosse Pointe school system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, you get to start question number 7. The Grosse Pointe Schools curriculum, instruction, and student learning goals empowers a council on race, equity, and inclusion to support staff and students. What will you do to support this council?
Thank you. I do believe diversity is critical. We have to support that in our schools, in our school district. We have to support that in our communities and at work. I believe community members getting together, talking about these issues, coming up with plans, presenting those plans to the board is important.
Thank you. Mr. Derringer?
So the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Council is a critical part of the current strategic plan that expires at the end of this year. How we have these conversations and who has a seat at the table is extremely important to fostering the most productive dialogue. Curriculum has a lot of state standards. There's not much flexibility for what we can actually teach in public schools. But who is there and what experiences they bring to those conversations, that is where you can truly get a full picture and real learning inside of a classroom. Let's talk about history curriculum as it relates to race and equity and inclusion, especially in our neighborhoods and in Harper Woods. I think it's pretty important that the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Council is making some very critical decisions about curriculum in our district, or we might try to pretend that the Harper Woods community doesn't even exist.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
We live in a very diverse community, and we need to acknowledge that and support that and foster communication and education. I don't believe that it's the goal or the job of the board to make decisions about curriculum, instruction, and learning goals. It's the job of our curriculum instructors. It's the job of our superintendent. It's the job of our teachers and the people who belong on those committees. They can support those people. They can encourage those people. They can allow for dialogue and opportunities for them to do their jobs, but it is not a top-down thing that the board is instructing. It is not our position to determine what curriculum is taught.
Thank you. Ms. Fradenburg?
Would you mind repeating the question?
Not at all. The Grosse Pointe Schools curriculum, instruction, and student learning goals empower a council on race, equity, and inclusion to support staff and students. What will you do to support this council?
Yes, so I do believe that everyone has an equal opportunity to be successful. I think that there are ways to go about it. I know that this is a hot button subject both nationally and here in our district. And I respect the desire to support our most disadvantaged students. But true equity really means leveling up, not lowering standards. I believe in expanding access to opportunities to help all students reach high expectations. An example of this would be the SAT prep course that is now offered in our high schools versus removing electives in the name of equity at different high schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Worden?
Thank you. This council was made part of our strategic plan for good reason. It's very important that we embrace the commitment to a learning environment that embraces diversity. And that means that every student has access to academic success and opportunities. I don't think there's ever been a suggestion that we would lower our standards. And in fact, it increases our standards because it makes sure that every student has the opportunity to learn. I think it's important to point out that not every student learns in the same way. So every time that we embrace this council and what they do, we make a commitment to saying that every student has the resources and what they need to be successful in this community. And I embrace that and I support what they do.
Thank you. Mr. Collins?
Well, I think, again, another incorrect statement, actually. our former director of secondary education actually tried to implement lowering of our standards by trying to implement grading for equity last year. It obviously didn't go in, something that the committee and the board couldn't support. In terms of our Race Equity Inclusion Council, I met with Mr. Bishop a year after the council was formed, and I asked what's actually happening. And so there's only been actually 2 presentations to the board in 4 years of the Race Equity Inclusion Council. To be honest with you, I don't know what their interface is with the curriculum. I don't think they've ever reported to the curriculum committee. But they've only presented twice. You can go on our board website and you can look for the Race Equity and Inclusion Council. I believe it was October of 2020 and October of 2021. Other than that, I can't tell you what they're doing. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Bishop the next time I speak with him.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci.
Yes. So I believe that curriculum and assessment are very important, especially in public schools. Honestly, I've been always fascinated with how we teach our kids in Grosse Pointe public schools. I really love the trips that they take. A trip is equal to a class that you take for a full semester, honestly. Foreign languages and cultures, always fascinated how seriously those teachers take those classes and teach those classes. I am for a balanced approach that considers student well-being alongside with academic performance. And another point that I want to make tonight is focus in elementary schools. It seems that we are a lot focused on seniors, what they are going to do, how they are going to graduate, where they are going. Well, that work starts 12 years earlier. We need more sources in elementary school because that is exactly where we start to educate our children with the idea of being, in a public school and doing the best for them.
Time is up. Thank you. Ms. Hopper?
We live in an ever diverse world, and that I think is a benefit to all of us. Learning about each other, learning to live together, value each other, and appreciate each other. So embracing racial differences is valuable and is something we should do. I also believe very, very heartily in inclusion. We should include everyone and value them on their learning experience. I have had some challenges because they put forth the idea of equity long before they were able to define the term equity. So I do have troubles with these terms changing in their definitions. So I would want to work very carefully with this group to make sure that they're not changing definitions, that they're setting attainable goals and saying what they want to achieve and telling us when they have achieved it. So we have a good plan for that.
Thank you. And Mr. Klepp?
Not every family in Grosse Pointe looks the same. Whether you look at an economic dimension or a racial dimension, we have over 20% of our school population would be considered, fall into one of those minorities. So appropriate diversity initiatives, the real goal is to help our kids access the ABCs. You have 9 people up here who will all say we are for academic excellence, and that's because we are. We all are. Appropriate diversity initiatives, they help people access those ABCs.
Thank you. Mr. Derringer will start us off with the next question. What is your position on removing or banning books in school libraries and in curricula?
So this conversation lit the entire nation on fire 3 or 2 years ago, and it was part of a political movement to get elected to school boards and make these decisions and bring these conversations to the board table. I'm against banning books because I am for trusting librarians and principals and curriculum directors and the experts that we pay to run the district to make their decisions. I don't think a board should be full of micromanagers. That is the number one problem with our current board. They are micromanagers, especially when it comes to access to education and books and reading material. Parents do a fine job managing their kids with what they can read. What is in the library for everybody else to read is none of their business.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
I think it's an easy answer. I'm against banning books, absolutely. And I agree with what Mr. Derringer said, that we need to leave this decision about what's in our libraries to the experts that we have hired in the positions of librarians, school curriculum directors, the teachers. They will lead the kids to the appropriate reading materials, but we can't ban books. We can't access or limit the access to information. We can't, as a board, do that thing because that is not our job.
Thank you. Ms. Fradenburg.
Yes, I am against banning any books, and in fact, I am a huge proponent of reading. If you are going to read something and it interests you, that will spark a love for education for life. My daughter has probably been reading my book club books, which make me blush, since she was 12, so no banning books.
Thank you. Ms. Worden.
I'm 100% against banning books. I also trust our teachers, our curriculum directors, our principals, our experts in the field. Our curriculum committee vets our books. They vet our curriculum thoroughly, and I trust them to do that. I want to point out that when I went to back to school night with my daughter, or with my husband for freshman back to school night at North, I was thrilled to see that they're reading To Kill a Mockingbird. And if we would have embraced what other people have done in the past, that book wouldn't even be on the list, because it's been attempted to be banned in many school districts because of the nature of the issues. But I trust that my daughter is mature enough to read things like that because her teacher has decided that she's mature enough to read that. So I'm 100% parents coming in and trying to ban books because they don't like topics.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is kind of a wasted question when we have only 9 questions tonight. I don't think this is an issue. Wasn't an issue 2 years ago either. I'm not, as a board member, I have no role in what books are in our library, or it's your job as a parent, every one of you, to decide what's appropriate for your child. I'm not going to let the teacher decide what's appropriate for my child. If a teacher recommends a book, I, as a parent, would review that and make a decision based on my child, as all of you should. You need to decide what's right for your child in your household. So, again, that's the answer, but I really think this was a wasted question.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci.
Thank you. I'm a published author. I have books published in 2 languages. Books are like people. Some of them are really good, some of them are not necessarily the same good. But banning books now, United States of America, century 21, it sounds really not appropriate. I lived under the communist regime, and yes, they did that. We are not going to do that. I don't believe that we should even mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper.
I also am against banning books because I too am trusting of our librarians and the staff members who are in place to select these books. I myself was a librarian for many years all through college, and I know that the book that I completed my thesis on, The Odyssey, has been banned in some places, and that just breaks my heart. I think reading is important and books are important, and we entrust our administrators to select the books for our students, so it's not the board's role, and I do not believe that our board has banned any books, so I also agree it's not really a current topic.
Thank you. Mr. Klepp.
Mortally opposed to banning any books. I had a chance to talk with a librarian last week, and it was just educational for me to understand how they go about evaluating whether a book should be carried. The rubrics that have been developed over the years. What are the critical reviews? How much in demand is this book? But certainly, I echo what everybody else says, that this is not a board-level decision. We trust those rubrics and let the professionals do their jobs. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Roberts.
Yeah, I am not for banning books.
Thank you. Ms. Hall, you get to start our final question for the evening. What 3 goals should be in the strategic plan for 2025 to 2027 and beyond? Describe how you would engage the community in the strategic planning process.
Save the best for last, right? I believe that I'll start with how we would engage the community. I do believe that all stakeholders in this need a voice, so that should include parents, students, teachers, other staff members, administrators, and making sure that everybody has a say in what we do. I believe that we should support initiatives that are directly related to students in the classroom. We all believe in academic excellence. I think that we have academic excellence, so the things that continue to support our students are the things that I would support as well. So supporting students, I think retaining and attracting qualified staff, and making sure that we are addressing the needs of our community.
Thank you. Ms. Fradenburg.
Yes, so I would say that, again, one of the things I'm running on is measurable goals. So it's not that other things are not important, it's just that we need to, in our strategic plan, have things that we can measure to judge our success. So I would say college readiness, math and reading proficiency, and then, again, retaining and attracting teachers to our district. Those would be great places to start.
Thank you. Ms. Worden?
Well, first of all, I think that we have to make sure that we maintain academic excellence. That's going to be the first and foremost. But I think that we have to make sure we include every student in this measure. And it was one of the questions asked before. We have to make sure that special needs students are given the same opportunities as anyone else in the district. Second of all, we have to seriously address enrollment. We're having a decline, and I know part of that is birth rate, but part of it is we have to make sure that people want to come to this district. And that includes keeping smaller class size. We can't balance the budget on making bigger class size. I think we also have to market our accomplishments. That should be part of it. And I also think that we have to amplify our students. We have to listen to our students. We have to see what's important to them and make sure that student goals are also included as part of the plan. And finally, I think our fiscal responsibility really needs to be addressed. We got to get our fund balance up to 10%, closer to 15%. We have to stop spending things like on lawyers, we have to look at some of our overages.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Well, hopefully you've read everything I've written over the last strategic plan. If you haven't, you can go back and look at it. I wrote an article called "The Plan is Not Smart. Our current strategic plan has no measurable goals whatsoever." So most importantly, whatever you decide, whatever the strategic planning committee decides is important to this district, whether it's academic excellence, whether it's retaining teachers and training teachers, whether it's addressing the needs of our special ed students, the plan has to have goals and they have to be measurable. Otherwise, it's worthless like the current strategic plan we have today. And most importantly, you have to have a cross-section of the public, not a hand-picked superintendent's group of 50 people who are monolithic in thought. It has to represent all of us in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci.
Thank you. I would strive for educational excellence instead of just academic excellence. There is a big gap between the two because educational excellence includes both learning and teaching and the methods that we use there. So giving priority to students, but also teacher retention, I would consider educating the community with the issues that we are facing in public education here in Grosse Pointe. And of course, I would point enrollment. Everybody has something to do in that regard so we can get kids back in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper.
So a good strategic plan is really a long-term vision for any organization that's putting it together. And I envision the Grosse Pointe public school system as an education destination for families. So our strategic plan would have to uphold the highest academic standards and have measurable standards for those while providing robust extracurricular programs and multiple learning pathways. I also think, of course, it would need to address financial responsibility and accountability, so understanding that we're transparent with every dollar we spend. And this is sort of in reverse order. I should have included it with the academic standards, but also should include multiple learning pathways so that we address different learning needs for different students and make sure we can achieve those.
Time. Thank you. Mr. Klepp.
First, I'd say academic excellence, and I mean that in a competitive way. We have potential new parents who are evaluating districts competitively, and we should have that as one of our goals, that we perform very well relative to the best districts in the state. That's one. Second goal would be a sustainable financial footing. And a third goal, and I don't know exactly what the metric would be for this, but we are a more diverse district than people realize. So finding a way to a metric that would, or goal related to how we skillfully bring along all the students within our district, and the rate of improvement that we see when someone enters this district should be part of our goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. Strategic plan, yes, of course. This is critical. We need to have goals within that strategic plan that are simple and realistic. And yes, they have to be measurable. As far as engaging the community, yeah, you're right. We need teachers. We need students. And in pediatric hospitals all over this country, we engage our patients in our plans, in our strategy to help us improve. We need to do the same thing here in our school district. My three things: retention and attraction of teachers. These are the people that are in front of our students every single day. Number two, maintain and elevate academic excellence. We have to get better as a school district. Number three, enrollment of new students and retention of current students. There are still a lot of students and families in this community that go to private schools. We need to get them back.
Time. Thank you. Mr. Derringer.
Very quickly, 3 goals: short, medium, long-term facilities plan. Review grant funding opportunities and make sure that the guy that writes the grants for your district doesn't hightail it to another district. Explore opportunities to expand pre-K offerings so that we can increase enrollment over the long term. Those are the 3 specific, measurable, and attainable goals. How to engage the community: be honest, be transparent, be accountable. Don't sit up here and say that you trust teachers when you were the secretary on the board for somebody that wanted to put cameras and record teachers and snitch on each other. Don't go to that organization's website and scrub it from the server. Don't dissolve it in June and then file for the school board race in July. Stand up to the community. When they don't like your decision, don't shorten the comment periods. Stand there and listen to their feedback. It's important. Don't change the meeting time so people can't show up. When you make tough decisions, stand there and be accountable, and people will appreciate it, even if they disagree.
Thank you. We will end this segment with the candidates' closing statements, not to exceed 1.5 minutes. And the order of presentation is now reversed. So we will begin with Mr. Derringer.
Okay, thank you again to the League of Women Voters for hosting us, and the audience here and at home for researching the race. If we stripped everything away from the exterior here, I'm a coach in my heart. In one sense, a coach is just a wannabe teacher who loves sports. But in a larger sense, a coach is the leader and decision maker who must create opportunities for the team to grow and be great. For our schools to operate like a great team, we have to include everyone and challenge everybody to prioritize the collective good. This election is about which candidates have a vision for a public school district that will help stabilize current operations and finances and help build a system that supports and elevates all our kids in every community together. The board must prioritize students by amplifying their voice and listening intently, support teachers by protecting their autonomy and respecting their experience, spend responsibly by directing public funds toward the classroom, not the courtroom, and ensure transparency by communicating openly and humbly facing the inevitable scrutiny in front of the entire community. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Your closing statement.
I am committed to serving this community, providing appropriate governance, supporting and holding accountable the superintendent, the leader of this district. As a trustee on the Grosse Pointe School Board, I will serve with integrity and commitment to the responsibilities which includes financial stability and sustainability. I look forward to serving on this board starting next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klepp, your closing statement.
Let's go lose ourselves in a book. That's what I remember my third grade teacher, Mrs. Shepard, saying to us as we tramped down to the library. Go lose yourself in a book. And I took her up on it. I remember Encyclopedia Brown, Detective Mysteries being my particular favorite. Sitting on the floor of the library, getting deep into it, losing track of time, probably being late for something. That and other similar things are some of the formative memories that I have when I think about my own love of reading, my love of learning, and ultimately, there are stepping stones that lead me here to this stage, seeking to represent this very special community and this school district, seeking to serve and unite. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper, your closing statement.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters and for everyone for attending tonight. I appreciate the engagement of the community, and I really, one of the best things about this campaign has been engaging with our community, talking with each other, understanding where we stand today. And I really believe that for the most part, when we have these conversations, some of the accusations are proven to be old, false, and I appreciate, that we're that kind of a community. I believe we can engage our community in discussion and build integrity, or have integrity and honesty. And those of us anchored here in this community who know each other are best positioned to combat those narratives. So let's work together to enhance the two positive years that we've had here with enrollment increases, balanced budget, and a school system that we can all stand behind and build together.
Thank you. Ms. Gellci, your closing statement.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you, Grosse Pointe League of Women Voters, for your unwavering commitment to excellence in public education. As a longtime Grosse Pointe resident and an experienced educator, I bring a wealth of cross-cultural educational expertise and a distinctive organizational perspective on the table. Unlike the slates that you heard about, I am not tied to any particular group interest that could lead to a dysfunctional school board. My sole focus is on a safe environment for students, teachers, and administrators that aims both excellence in education and teacher retention. I invite you to vote for me not just for my qualifications, but because I stand for a cohesive and effective school board that will guide Grosse Pointe Public Schools towards a brighter future. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Mr. Collins, your closing statement.
Yes, I didn't write a closing statement. I really wanted to listen to what people talked about and then kind of respond. But I'd like to thank the youngest member of our family for making noise back there. My granddaughter, who's less than a year old, will be a year old next month, showed up along with her parents and my wife, so that's great. So I think what you heard tonight are kind of two opposing views, right? People who don't want to acknowledge the problems of the past and want to talk about transparency and budgets now when they either supported a board and administration who squandered millions of dollars of our fund equity between 2020 and 2022 and said, we support that administration. Those are the people who we can't have on our next board. When Mr. Cotton and Ms. Jupe were elected to the board in November of 2022 and joined the board in January of 2023, they started the resurrection of our district, both on a financial and returning. We found one of the best superintendents, I think the best superintendent in the state. We're on a path to restore greatness to Grosse Pointe schools. If you want to see that path continue, you know who you need to vote for. If you want to vote for people who want to close additional schools and not have a possibility to reopen them, you know who to vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Worden, your closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thanks to all the people that came out tonight to listen. And thank you for the engagement of this community. We have such a special community that so many people care about who they're voting for. I love this district. I've loved this district since I walked into Monteith in 2015, and my daughter's teacher, Mrs. Richards, was there to take care of my little girl when I left her to school for the first time. My love for Grosse Pointe Public School System continues as I went to back to school night a couple weeks ago, and I met her teachers, and I saw the engagement and the dedication that they have to our kids. It's just outstanding. We have excellent public schools. So to say that we're going to restore the Grosse Pointe Public School System, I think is false. We have public schools that are absolutely excellent. I'm running for re-election because I care deeply about public education, and I want to continue my commitment. This election matters because we're at a time where we need to move the district forward, and we need to address some of the critical problems. We need to address the budget shortfalls. We cannot operate in a budget deficit. We need to prioritize the financial stability of the district. We need to address enrollment. We need to address teacher retention. Our teachers are amazing, and we don't want them leaving. We don't want them leaving en masse. I'm going to continue to be a voice of reason on this board. I'm going to continue to ask difficult questions, and I'm going to continue to push for transparency where there has not been there. Please.
Thank you. Time. Ms. Fradenburg, your closing statement.
Thank you. Well, unlike Terry, I did actually have a closing statement written in a neat paragraph, but I'm going to go off the cuff, and I can see my husband starting to sweat as I say that. But what I will say is I just want to say that everybody that's sitting up here tonight, whether we agree or disagree, or you've said nasty things or commented nasty things on Facebook, anyone in the audience as well, we have so much more in common than we have separate. And we need to focus on that. And it takes a lot of courage to sit up here and answer rapid fire questions. Every single person up here is trying to make a difference. And if you are not up here or running for school board, I think we need to just have a little civility and also just appreciate that people are putting themselves out there. They are taking away their privacy as a citizen to run for public office. I'm very happy that I did so. I'm very passionate about our schools, and I really truly believe that we can make a difference, but I also feel that I will collaborate with anybody up here, and we need to set the tone for our students and our community to try and get along so that we can move forward together.
Thank you. And Ms. Hull, your closing statement.
We are fortunate to live in a community that is engaged and invested in our schools. Although school board races are nonpartisan, they are not apolitical. You've heard two very different platforms here tonight. One group is running on promoting academic excellence and a return to tradition. We have academic excellence. To say otherwise is to go against our talented professional educators and the incredible achievements of our students. Let's return to civility, to equality, to giving all stakeholders a voice and access to information, to embracing our differences and learning to work together towards shared goals. I am a parent. We all are. I want what's best for my kids. We all do. The difference is that as a teacher, I want what's best for all of our kids, no matter who they are or where they live within our community. I believe that what's best for our students is to prioritize our greatest assets, our teachers, pay them well and respect their experience. In the spring of '23, with a heavy heart, I resigned my position at North. If there had been more stability, security, and support from the board, I'd still call room B211 home. If we don't take care of our teachers will continue to leave. Let's move forward together. Let's reestablish transparency and fiscal responsibility by investing our resources closest to kids and eliminating unnecessary expenses. Thank you to everyone here tonight and to the League.
Thank you. Audience, let's have a round of applause for our candidates. Thanks to these candidates for their commitment to public service in our community. I also again want to thank those attending here this evening in person and also via live stream. And a special thanks again to the Grosse Pointe Public Schools for their use of the auditorium this evening. If you submitted a question for tonight and it was not asked, We encourage you to contact the candidate directly. This forum will be available for viewing in the next few days on the League's YouTube channel. A link will be available on our website at lwvgrossepointe.org. Remember, the League of Women Voters has an online voter guide, vote411.org, which covers this race, local ballot proposals, and national and state races. All races on vote411.org will go live next week. The League will also distribute the League of Women Voters of Michigan's printed voter guide with national and state races to city halls, clerk's offices, our local libraries, and other venues by the end of September. You can register or verify your voter registration status by calling your city clerk, going to vote411.org, or to the Secretary of State's website at michigan.gov/vote. Absentee ballots will be available to voters beginning September 26th. Use the drop boxes in your community to return them or take them to your city clerk. Your absentee ballot must be received by your local clerk by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Early in-person voting is now available in Michigan for all federal and statewide elections. Early voting is available for at least 9 consecutive days before the election, at least 8 hours per day. Early voting in the Grosse Pointe communities begins on Saturday, October 26th, and runs through Sunday, November 3rd. You can pick up a ballot at your early voting site and vote and insert your ballot into the tabulator. You can also bring your absentee ballot completed to an early voting site and insert it into the tabulator. And finally, Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Polls will open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. Remember, your vote is your voice. Please make a plan to vote and make it a priority. Thank you and good evening.